What you listening to, son?
Protests broke out in Grand Rapids, Michigan, following a fatal police shooting of a 20.
By the way, this is the first time of me hearing it. I know what happened, but I don't know any of the details. So this is a pretty raw react that's probably gonna be coming your way.
Protests broke out in Grand Rapids, Michigan, following a fatal police shooting of a 26-year-old man by the name of Patrick Lyoya. The shooting occurred after an officer who has not been named by authorities tried to pull him over during a traffic stop over his license plates. Now, before we get to the footage of what happened, and there is a lot of footage of what happened during this traffic stop on April 4th, I do want to provide some context so you understand what you're going to see in the videos. So the officer asks for his driver's license, and at that point, he turns to the door and asks the passenger something that is inaudible in the video. So Lyoya is the one who turns to the door and asks the passenger something that's inaudible in the video. Then he briefly points inside the car, then closes the driver's side door and begins to walk to the front of the car. And you're gonna see this in some of the footage that we'll show you. So there's body cam footage. Body camera footage shows the officer then saying, no, 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 stop, and put your hands behind your head, and grabbing Lyoya's arms. Lyoya can then be seen pushing away and running to the sidewalk before he's tackled on a nearby lawn. The two men struggle on the ground, and the officer tells him to stop resisting. The officer also unholsters his taser and fires toward him. And at that point, he appears, Lyoya appears to grab it from him. And from the footage that we've reviewed, you can see that happening. And what ends up happening later is the cop takes the gun out of his holster, and as he's apprehended with his face on the ground, facing the ground, he is shot with one bullet in the head.
Yet another execution of a black man. Face down, shot in the head. Wow.
I give you that detail because it's important to the story, but more importantly, when we get to the videos later, it is something that you see, and I want to give you proper warning for that. But I do want you to take a look at...
Hey, yo, that means I might have to go full screen and not show it. Fair warning.
At the video that was provided through the body cam footage. It cuts off at some point. I'll explain why in just a moment, but first let's take a look at what happened.
Do you have a driver's license? Do you speak English?
Yes.
Can I see your license?
What does it want?
The plate doesn't belong in this car. Do you have a license or no? Do you have a driver's license?
Yes.
Where is it at?
It's in the car.
Get it for me.
What does it want?
The plate does not belong in this car. No, no, no. Stop, stop. Put your hands up. Stop. 1915, got one running. North south. Stop. Stop resisting.
Taser.
Let go of the taser.
Okay, it didn't show it just yet.
Let go of the taser.
So at that point, the body cam footage stops because the camera was turned off. And they're investigating that. So far, what we've heard is...
Dude, you can't do... Hold on. This is in Michigan? Okay. Can cops turn off body cam? They can't. Jesus Christ. Wow. Wow.
They can tell when the button that turns the camera on and off has been pressed. And apparently during that physical altercation, it was pressed repeatedly. But in order for it to turn off, you have to keep it pressed down for 3 seconds.
Oh boy.
Drop taser! Get back! Get back!
I mean, so you can hear the cop telling the passenger in the vehicle to step back. You can tell the person's like pretty far away from the cop. But nonetheless, the officer fired a single shot to Lyoya's head while his face was toward the ground. The struggle lasted roughly 90 seconds and the officer fired the taser twice, according to police. Both shots hit the ground, the taser, and did not hit Lyoya. Rashad, you know, there's this ongoing investigation. I do want to hear your thoughts about how they're conducting the investigation. But first, you know, just your initial thoughts on what transpired and how this shooting took place.
My thoughts are it's an execution. Those are my immediate thoughts. So let's be very clear. The young black male should have seen a judge. But just because you need to see a judge does not mean you're supposed to see your maker. It's evident the man was trying to avoid arrest. Avoiding arrest is not a capital offense. This cop decided to play judge, jury, and executioner. And I don't believe for 1 minute, Anna, that somehow this recording, this body cam footage magically turned off right before he decided to put a bullet in the back of his head. And then, remember, he turned it back on when they were trying to perform life-saving procedures. He made sure to get that on camera. I don't think he knew that somebody was recording him. I don't think he knew that there was a bystander actually recording the entire situation. And let me also highlight a few other things. As you mentioned about the police investigating the police, which is part of their reform matrix, this doesn't exist in any other profession. Medical doctors, when they commit malpractice or negligence, medical doctors don't investigate them. When watershed management has corruption issues, watershed management does not investigate watershed management. There's truly an adversarial, independent, non-connected organization that will investigate every other industry in the United States of America except for policing. And this is why people don't like the police. Not because corrupt actors exist, because corrupt actors exist in every industry known to man. It's because they tend to get away with the corruption and they have a lower standard of accountability and responsibility than any other profession. And this is something that we have allowed because of the trust equity we placed in policing. Policing was never our public safety model, never. Public safety is the goal. Policing is one dynamic to get you to public safety. And what we have done is we have allowed them to trick us to believe that policing is public safety, and they are contrary to public safety, as you've seen in this situation.
Listen, I don't know what to say. Look into the origin of policing here in the United States. For those who might be even the slightest bit sympathetic towards law enforcement, I urge you to go onto Google and look up the origins of American policing. You will find that policing originally were slave patrols. That is where cops come from. And if you want to try to make it like as if that's not an argument, That was back then. This is now. Okay. But let me ask you this. Go onto Google, go onto YouTube, and I want you to learn everything you can about how to build houses. Why? Because you'll know that in order to start building a house, you have to build first and foremost a foundation for the house to sit on, even before its skeletal matrix is put in. Even before any 2x4, before any wood, you must first have a foundation. Let me ask you something. You learn all this. You build the foundation. And then don't do anything. Don't build a house. Build the foundation only. Build the foundation and wait 40 years. Just let that foundation be a foundation, and that's it. Nothing more. For 40 years. And then come back to it. Start building a house. How will that turn out? Being exposed to the elements for that long. Bare. Nature growing over it and whatnot. It's not going to be that solid, stable, or suitable of a foundation anymore. Now wait 400 years. When your house is built upon an unstable foundation, your house will crumble. That, ladies and gentlemen, NBs and beyond, is American policing. And that is why I advocate for reparations.
We should not be rioting, we should not be looting, we should not be tearing up our own communities. And then there's been an argument of the other side of we should be hitting them in the pocket. We should be focusing on the blackout days where we don't spend money. But, you know, I feel like we should do both. And I feel like I support both. And I'll tell you why I support both. I support both because when you have a civil unrest like this, there are three types of people in the streets. There are the protesters, there are the rioters, and there are the looters. The protesters are there because they actually care about what is happening in the community. They want to raise their voices, and they are there strictly to protest. You have the rioters who are angry, who are anarchists, who really just want to shit up, and that's what they're going to do regardless. And then you have the looters. And the looters almost exclusively are just there to do that, to loot. Now, people are like, well, what did you gain? Well, what did you get from looting? I think that as long as we're focusing on the what, we're not focusing on the why, and that's my issue with that. As long as we're focusing on what they're doing, we're not focusing on why they're doing. And some people are like, well, those aren't people who are legitimately angry about what's happening. Those are people who just want to get stuff. Okay, well then, let's go with that. Let's say that's what it is. Let's ask ourselves why in this country in 2020, the financial gap between poor blacks and the rest of the world is at such a distance that people feel like their only hope and only opportunity to get some of the things that we flaunt and flash in front of them all the time is to walk through a broken glass window and get it. That they are so hopeless that getting that necklace, getting that TV, getting that change, getting that bed, getting that phone, whatever it is that they're gonna get, is that in that moment when the riots happen and if they present an opportunity of looting, that's their only opportunity to get it. We need to be questioning that why. Why are people that poor? Why are people that broke? Why are people that food insecure, that clothing insecure, that they feel like their only shot, that they are shooting their shot by walking through a broken glass window to get what they need. And then people want to talk about, well, there's plenty of people who pulled themselves up by their bootstraps and got it on their own. Why can't they do that? Let me explain to you something about economics in America. And I'm so glad that as a child, I got an opportunity to spend time at Push where they taught me this, is that we must never forget that economics was the reason that black people were brought to this country. We came to do the agricultural work in the South and the textile work in the North. Do you understand that? That's what we came to do. We came to do the agricultural work in the South and the textile work in the North. Now, if I right now decided that I wanted to play Monopoly with you. And for 400 rounds of playing Monopoly, I didn't allow you to have any money. I didn't allow you to have anything on the board. I didn't allow for you to have anything. And then we played another 50 rounds of Monopoly, and everything that you gained and you earned while you were playing that round of Monopoly was taken from you. That was Tulsa. That was Rosewood. Those are places where we built Black economic wealth, where we were self-sufficient, where we owned our stores, where we owned our property, and they burned them to the ground. So that's 450 years. So for 400 rounds of Monopoly, you don't get to play at all. Not only do you not get to play, you have to play on the behalf of the person that you're playing against. You have to play and make money and earn wealth for them, and then you have to turn it over to them. So then for 50 years, you finally get a little bit and you're allowed to play. And every time that they don't like the way that you're playing, or that you're catching up, or that you're doing something to be self-sufficient, they burn your game. They burn your cards. They burn your Monopoly money. And then finally at the release and the onset of that, they allow you to play and they say, okay, now you catch up. Now at this point, the only way you're gonna catch up in the game is if the person shares the wealth, correct?
Yeah.
But what if every time you share the wealth, then there's psychological warfare against you to say, oh, you're an equal opportunity hire. So if I played 400 rounds of Monopoly with you and I had to play and give you every dime that I made, and then for 50 years, every time that I played, if you didn't like what I did, you got to burn it like they did in Tulsa and like they did in Rosewood. How can you win? How can you win? You can't win. The game is fixed. So when they say, why do you burn down the community? Why do you burn down your own neighborhood? It's not ours. We don't own anything. We don't own anything. Trevor Noah said it so beautifully last night. There's a social contract that we all have, that if you steal or if I steal, then the person who is the authority comes in and they fix the situation. But the person who fixes the situation is killing us. So the social contract is broken. And if the social contract is broken, why the f do I give a shit about burning the Football Hall of Fame, about burning a Target? You broke the contract when you killed us in the streets and didn't give up. You broke the contract when for 400 years we played your game and built your wealth. You broke the contract when we built our wealth again on our own by our bootstraps in Tulsa, and you dropped bombs on us. When we built it in Rosewood and you came in and you slaughtered us. You broke the contract, so your Target, your Hall of Fame. As far as I'm concerned, they could burn this bitch to the ground. And it still wouldn't be enough. And they are lucky that what black people are looking for is equality and not revenge.
Even if we had it at the lowest of interest rates, 0.0000000 fucking 1 goddamn percent interest. For all the time that we did not repay for the stolen wages, the ungiven, unpaid wages for black people's labor here in the United States, even at the lowest of interest rates, for what is owed in unpaid labor. The United States owes hundreds of billions, if not trillions of dollars. But then you got your Ben Shapiro's and your Steven Crowders and your Charlie Kirks saying that systemic racism don't fucking exist. And then you look at this shit with Patrick Lyoya and Breonna Taylor and George Floyd or Rodney King.
Yeah, so I agree with you about how they're spinning the investigation as like a truly independent investigation. I watched the entirety of the press conference, and it seemed like even some of the lawyers in the audience who have represented, black defendants or black.
The fact that fact that this shit doesn't get people's blood boiling like it should amazes me.
Black people who have been brutalized by cops, we're kind of buying like the so-called transparency in all of this. I don't know how much of that I'm buying. Instead of escalating the situation, could there have been a better way? Maybe it'll hurt his ego to let him flee in that moment, to just let it go. But you've got another person there. You've got the vehicle there. Isn't there a better way to handle it so you don't escalate the situation in that moment and then maybe apprehend the suspect in a calm way later where no one gets killed?
Yeah, you got to remember this entire interaction was over things that are not felonies, okay? So none of this interaction was created because of some felony activity that the officer observed. Here's another dynamic. Tasers, okay. A taser is a non-lethal weapon. It's so non-lethal that in order to be taser certified, the police officer must be tasered him or herself. That's the prerequisite to taser certification. So they know this is a non-lethal device. Let me bring up this because it's important for context. A few days ago, a white male wanted for murder in Sandy Springs, Georgia, broke into another home, burglarized that home. A slew of police officers came inside of the home and begged this white male, please come downstairs, Mr. Bad Man. We don't want to hurt you. He comes downstairs. There's no SWAT. There's no shooting. There's no running after him. He runs downstairs with a knife, finds a cop, stabs the cop multiple times, damn near kills him. What do the cops do? They try non-lethal force to subdue him after he stabbed the cop multiple times. They fight him inside of the house, Anna. The fight goes to the outside of the house. They still don't shoot him. And then, because they're so close to him in physical combat, they decide to go ahead and shoot him one time to wound him, to stop him from fighting and damn near killing them. He was then taken to a hospital. He was then booked. He is now in prison. He is now in jail, likely to go to prison, but would get the opportunity of due process. Why were the cops able to make that call? Because of proximity. They said he's close enough for us to shoot to wound, and they decided to do that even after he attempted to murder a police officer. That's a white male. That was a white male. We cannot dismiss the reality that routinely when cops have the spectrum of choice, when it comes to a black male or someone of darker hue, they decide to go to the extreme of that spectrum. This cop is going to likely get away with this because they're going to deem it legal. But legal doesn't mean right. And legal does not mean we are valuing humanity. And that's what you see happening in all of these cases.
I want to tell a story real quick. We can hopefully be all in agreement that for some odd reason, when a white man is being pursued by the law in any capacity, there's a charitability on behalf of the cops. But a black man, oh, I feared for my life. Even if they're not in fear for their lives. Even if they break into, not even break into, but sneakily and stealthily unlock and trespass into an apartment where a black man lives. He's wrapped up in a blankie. He doesn't even have his finger on the trigger, let alone know who's entering his home without his permission. Probably thinking it's just some thugs trying to get at him. Thugs did enter his home. And now Amir Locke is dead. I'm not going to use his real name, but I'll tell you a story real quick about a friend of mine we'll call Mac. Right after George Floyd was killed, Mac, a black man, walked into one of the 12-step meetings that I go to. I wasn't at this particular meeting. but he went in there. He went into this meeting for his recovery, and it was topic time. They all introduced themselves and went through the introductory readings and how, you know, we must adhere by the traditions of our fellowship. Usual routine things for a 12-step meeting. Probably one of the first times, if not one of the only time as far as I know, that at this particular clubhouse where I go for my meetings, that a topic like this was brought up. Fear and anger. These topics are usually brought up quite often, but not in this context. He said, I just had to have a talk, black people's version of the talk, with my children. Mac goes on to talk about how he was grieving George Floyd. Mac was talking about, brought the topic of how he had to talk to his kids about, if a cop pulls you over, this is what you do. If a cop approaches you, this is what you say. This is how you communicate with cops, so that way you don't get killed. Now, us white people, we got the birds and the bees and shit. That's our the talk. I didn't even get that talk. Black people's the talk? This is how you don't get killed by cops. Hopefully. He brought this up as a topic and said, I am angry and I'm grieving the murder of a fellow black man. And I fear for my children's lives. And it is threatening my sobriety. He comes to this meeting for help. And the first person to say anything after he brings this up as a topic is, of course, a white dude, who then says, well, I don't agree with the rioting and the looting. Bitch, that ain't the fucking topic. White privilege don't exist. There's a lot of white people like me who are Black Lives Matter allies and get just as fired up when shit like this happens. But god damn it. White people, get your fucking act together, man. I'm fucking sick of this shit. Murder. That's what this is. It's murder.
People do want public safety. People do understand the importance of public safety, but you can't have public safety if you don't trust the police. You can't have public safety if you don't think they're going to keep you safe. And it really, I mean, you look at polling, recent polling that shows, you know, Black communities, Latino communities, they do want public safety. But what they're experiencing is the antithesis of that. What they're experiencing is fear toward those who are supposed to be keeping them safe. And it's these types of stories that do just that.
That's right.
So, yeah.
Yeah, one friend of mine said, and I say this quickly, he said, you know, Doc, if I call the police, if I ever call the police, I have to assume that possibly my life is going to change forever if I call the police on somebody, because they can get it wrong, they can overreact. So he has to make a calculation of public safety based on the fact that the officer can be out of control.
Sometimes you need someone to come to your rescue. And if you can't rely on the people tasked to do that job, you're in a terrible situation. And we see that play out across the country, certainly for people in Black and brown communities, people who live in poor communities. And even after everything that transpired in 2020, despite all the protests, all the rage following George Floyd's murder, it really is depressing to see this culture continue.
Campaign Zero needs to be implemented ASAP. Go to campaignzero.org. It's got all the information on it. This is something we need to implement. We're probably already doing a charity live stream for LGBTQIA plus people and children that have been affected by recent bigoted legislation. And maybe it's also, if you have a reputable charity or a GoFundMe or some shit, if you guys could find something that we can donate to for for Amir Locke, for Patrick Lyoya, just let me know, and we'll probably do that too.